go in a little bit more about the extraterrestrials, the aliens, and whatnot. I'm seeing a lot of stuff about that.
Yeah, that's rather fascinating. I mean, that's the big deal is the alien stuff. It's curious for me because I'm, getting into the woo-woo world a few years back, and I wasn't really prepared for any of this. I was just a software engineer, right? A cube-farmed human. And then I started doing a few things which led me to my current path. And along the process, I come and I start talking to people. And it's just really strange for me to run across these people that used to work into the establishment and to find out that, oh yeah, the alien issue, extraterrestrials, contact, however you want to phrase it, is the single number one item on all the administration's efforts since Reagan or even earlier, and probably way back into Eisenhower. And it just doesn't show up to us guys out and about because they're doing all of the hiding for it from us. What was the other subject? Sorry?
Oh, let's see. I've got a whole bunch of them coming through here.
No, but you mentioned two.
Dog Poet.
The Dog Poet.
Oh, the Dog Poet. Yeah, there's a bunch of people actually that have picked up on that idea because it sounds good, the canine lyricist and the Dog Poet, and they're claiming to be such. Our data seems to suggest it's actually this reggae singer in Africa. And I say that because was a certain amount of language around the suffering that this person would endure on behalf of the children that were in his local environment. And indeed, this particular reggae singer he's a champion of the downtrodden, displaced orphan community all through Africa, and he's gone to jail for his beliefs.
Wow.
So he's starting to show up with some of those suffering words and everything. He's at maybe 23% of fulfillment of the language. What we're waiting for is the Sirius song. And I'm just using a...
as in the planet or the star system
yeah,
series?
Correct. As in the planet or the star system. That's what we're associating it with. It's just going to be a weird kind of phenomena. I don't think it'll go mainstream. And where it could be indeed a poetic kind of a deal, it does seem to, from our language, we've always described it as a song, and the words seem to imply that there is indeed a musical component to it, thus again pointing us back to this particular reggae singer out of Africa who has other attributes as well. But in any event, so we're waiting for this Sirius song because it'll be a truly phenomenal kind of a thing sweeping through the whole planet, and it will also be associated with the a revolution going active, first here in the U.S., of course, and then later on globally. In other words, our data shows that the Sirius song will come out, say that that the thing is actually produced and released in October of this year. We probably won't see it with any real clarity for the whole populace until it becomes used as, in essence, a revolutionary anthem. So at that point, then we'll know for sure that this is the guy. But we have some early clues that seem to suggest that the Sirius song, when it appears, we're actually actively looking for a language that should show up in it because it's a good key temporal marker. And again, I'm personally, I like reggae, and so I'm favoring this particular reggae singer. But he's less than 30% of the language, and so he could maybe morph into someone else that could grab a larger component of the language. But you know how you go on YouTube and you might look at a popular singer, I don't know who, just pick up a name. I'm terrible on that kind of stuff. And then you go look at their videos, and they might have, 1 million or 2 million or even 15 or 20 million people that have looked at their videos over time. The Sirius guy, when that song comes out, it will dominate the YouTube and Daily Motion and these kind of places to the point that there might be literally thousands of uploads of the things occurring constantly, and will overwhelm the ability of the powers that be to scrub those services. And so the numbers won't be there. In other words, you wouldn't be able to go and look at this particular video from this particular singer relative to the Sirius song and see that it had 20 million hits. It might only show 5 or 10 or even 20,000, but it'll be because they're constantly trying to scrub the thing off the net. And that itself will become an open, not open secret, but kind of an open joke. That, oh, well, what's the Sirius song up to today? Well, hey, it's gotten 5 hits, and yesterday it was 15. That kind of a deal, right?
Right.
So it should be actually relatively exciting for us, because when that appears, within a month, you'll start seeing all hell break loose in the U.S. And it actually, whether it shows up for us in a general sense in December or not when we expect it, in other words, it may show up and we might not even catch it. because there will be so much other stuff going on. And the chaos in the U.S. is certainly going to go on anyway. But whatever the song is, it will end up being a planetary anthem of a sort.
I'm going to have to check this guy out. I haven't really heard that much about him until I saw it here in chat, and then what you just said. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, and I'll dig up the guy's name. At the moment, I've forgotten it. I've actually corresponded with him and, told him to basically watch out if you're the guy, you got this kind of stuff coming down at you. And he was very receptive, so, he didn't immediately say you're crazy. He was very polite. So anyway, we'll see. But the data for the dog poet is very strong. And the individuals that are currently claiming that status perhaps need to be a little bit circumspect, because it won't be a good thing to be claiming that when the powers that be start getting really riled.
So let's see here. Let's take a scan here. Why don't you guys out there in chat pop in a keyword here if you got a specific thing. I've got so many coming through at once. I'm seeing earthquakes, earth changes.
Sure, let's go on that, and then let's call it a night after that.
All right.
Okay. The earth changes stuff here is going to be rather severe. We just stopped tracking earthquakes. Any big spectacular ones we'll certainly let people know about, but we're probably going to get to the point where there's multiple 7.0s a day, and it even becomes a subject of daily conversation as to how many 7.0s we've had that day. It'll all be leading up, we think, to the crack of the Pacific Plate, which will be a horrendous event. It'll be on the order of, say, 10 or 20 times the Banda Aceh in terms of the length of the plate that cracks, the amount of water that moves, and all of this. It may not yield as much devastation because of where the crack will happen relative to the population centers. When the Pacific Plate cracks, though, the places not to be will be any of the island areas. Rather, let me put it this way. It seems most likely to expect a larger impact on the southern Pacific islands, including the chains of the Philippines and into the New Hebrides and the Caledonian Islands all the way over to Fiji. They would seem to have a more immediate impact within that day of the plate cracking than any of the other areas immediately around it. But we do expect that the larger the tsunamis will probably head towards Alaska. How far it will go from the South Pacific and how much damage it'll have is not predictable at this point. But the earth changes that we're seeing now are part of the whole solar system change. The whole solar system change, and I don't know if you've noticed, but like today there was some stuff on space weather and a few of the other sites about this odd ribbon they've found in the magnetic bands of the heliosphere.
Interesting.
Okay, the ribbon is kind of curious looking, and it has I can really go into that because there are so many analogs and a fractal nature of that ribbon and rotating energies in various different forms that it's curious that they'd never discovered it before. And it begs the question, did it not exist before, or were we not looking for it before and couldn't find it? In either case, there's another question that I'm curious about, and that is, given that reality is fractal in nature, as above, so below, as within, so out, that kind of thing, but given that as a premise, it would make sense then to postulate such a ribbon along on the galactic level as well.
Wow.
And so here is the first sort of, I don't want to say it's evidence for our particular big squeeze theory, but it goes a little tiny ways towards supporting it, in the sense that we can say, oh, well, here's a strange ribbon in the magnetic underlayment of our solar system that they haven't really been able to describe or even get a handle on, and so it makes me think that our theory that there's a magnetic ribbon that of a similar nature that runs around the Milky Way galaxy, that's what's currently causing our problems, is at least a little bit more has a little bit more credence to it. If it's not believable, at least it's not. It can be say, oh yeah, you can discard it, but before you do, look, there's this strange ribbon around our solar system, and the odds are that there's probably a strange ribbon in the magnetic forces of any individual planet and all the way out to the galaxies. So those are part of the Earth changes. All of the strange stuff that's occurring on all of the various different planets. We've had the weird thing with the elongation of the rings of Saturn that suggests that was a large body that passed by and warped out the rings. Well, that's one explanation, but another explanation is a magnetic distortion. And so our data has always pointed towards this idea of what we call the big squeeze. And I don't see anything at this point that says that that squeeze is not continuing, and in fact, as the language actually materializes into reality, it seems to actually fill in a lot of the forecast language we'd had about the big squeeze. And that part is a little bit disturbing to everybody in the sense that the implications of this squeeze could be quite tremendous. Maybe we're going to get squeezed in a slow way that's caused all these problems, and then if we were really lucky, maybe after we pass the peak of our solar system, passing the peak of that magnetic squeeze, maybe it would take 2 to 3 or 4 times as long to be unsqueezed, right?
Yeah.
And if that were the case, maybe it would settle down gradually. But I've actually got, let me way back up, and I'll give you a bit of personal history here. When I first contacted George Ure to establish my bona fides, because he's a regular human trapped in his monkey mind, living in a regular world, and he gets contacted by this guy that says, I've got this screwy theory and some woo-woo stuff you need to pay attention to. And he was quite kind, and he did pay attention to it. And as a result of my initial contact with him, and to give him some idea of the stuff that had been hidden from him, I was telling him about some of the Sanskrit histories of the planet that I had read recently. This is back in 2000 or 2001. And one of the things I'd read was about this period of time in the Upper Harappan Valley, which is on the western side of the Notch of India, that this particular civilization, this is pre-Indian, or pre-Hindu civilization, Harappan civilization, and before that. Anyway, there's some literature that was actually, I think it was written in Pali, not Sanskrit per se, but it doesn't matter. A similar language, and it was discussed a period of time where they had a 7.0 earthquake, and then everybody got their houses destroyed. They went out, made new bricks, and built their houses back up, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, there was another one. And it never happened before. And it just kept going on and on and on until they finally got to the point that they just lived in tents because they got tired of rebuilding the houses. And the language that I saw in those weird old Sanskrit documents, if you translated it into English and put it in our forecast, that's kind of what the forecasts are saying. That the shaking, the quivering nature of our planet is going to get to the point where it will affect all of us pretty much daily. And we'll just sort of get around it.
Awesome stuff. Awesome. We've covered so much tonight. My head is just spinning. It's amazing. You've got so much info.
My vocal cords are starting to give out, so.
Okay, well, I guess we will call it a night. We want to thank you, Clif, for all the great info. It's been an awesome interview, regardless of the technical problems that both on your intruders and on our end. Like I said,
I have. By the way, I have 4 ports being attacked at the moment.
Well, we're probably going to end this at a good time then. I'd really like to do another interview with you. And,
as soon as we can set it up, yep.
And I'll compile some questions. Chris and Trev will probably get on that and get some questions. We'd love to hear from you again really soon, especially with this looming deadline coming up of the 25th.
Well, we should know a lot more about it on the 24th and the 25th itself. We should start seeing something come out in the language for that shift. And actually, the shift itself, from our viewpoint, the actual pinpoint hour is like 2 to 3 a.m. Pacific Coast time on the 25th. So it probably involves the Asian markets, since we think it's primarily a dollar thing. But yeah, certainly. Let's get together and as close to that period of time as we can.
Okay, and we do appreciate it. Also, everybody, I think Greg 2012, are you going to be reposting this interview as well? And also, we will have it probably on the NorthWatch YouTube channel, and I will also be posting it on my channel, which is Light Essence 37. And I'll put a link to that in chat here shortly.
It'll be available all over the net. Thanks a lot, Clif, for your time. I really appreciate all the input.
Well, I'm sorry about all the problems, guys. I guess we can do better next time, though.
It happens.
They're not problems. Remember that. They're challenges.
Challenges. Yes, right. There you go. Exactly so. Yes.
All right. We'll talk soon.
That's it. Throw my words back at me.
Well, thank you again, Clif. We really, really appreciate your time.
Sure. No worries, guys.
Take care, brother.
Bye.
Bye.